Welcome to the museum, everybody. I'm Denise Nowlin. I'm the education coordinator here at the museum. And today we have a special presentation entitled Bartlesville Weddings Throughout the Years. Now, for those of you who are not able to come today, we were going to have this event in February. So I hope that you'll be able to watch it on the Facebook page or later on our YouTube channel. We had a snowstorm that day, so we're glad that those of you who could make it today could come. My interest in Bartlesville weddings, I think, is connected to the fact that we have so many photographs in our archives of weddings. Two of our primary photographers who lived here in town, Frank Griggs and Bob Heil, did a lot of wedding photos for people throughout the years. And so we have over 10,000 wedding photos, just wedding photos in our archives. And then my colleagues are daily working on uploading more and more photos to our archives. So in the future, I'm not sure how many we'll have, but we have a long history of beautiful weddings here in our town. Now, one of the things that I have done is I've done a little research about the history of wedding dresses in general. And so when we start out the presentation, a lot of the people in our pictures are not wearing white wedding dresses. Traditionally, in the 1800s, it was more common for a bride and groom to have a photo taken of their big day, and they would wear their very finest clothes. Sometimes it might be something that they would wear to church or to fancy events. This is actually a picture of Sam and Racia Bobst, who lived here in the early 1900s. Sam was a Indian trader during the Osage, for the Osage Nation, and then he came to Bartlesville to be a clerk in the Johnstone and Keeler General Store that was established on the south side of the river. Later, he eventually became the sole proprietor of a general store, and he was known for selling machinery and wagons and buggies. And the Bobsts had one daughter, actually they had a son, and their daughter-in-law, her name was Ruby Bobst, and we have a recording of Ruby at a Washington County Historical Society event that I've been listening to for a couple weeks now, and she was quite an interesting lady. She talked about what it was like to live in Bartlesville before Bartlesville had sidewalks, and losing her shoes in the muddy streets of Bartlesville. This is a picture of William Ulysses and Emma Laura Spears Cox, and the Coxes are the parents of Geraldine Weston. Now, for those of you who are history buffs here in town, you've probably heard of Edgar Weston. He used to be an old newspaper man here in town, and we have a lot of his old newspaper articles that he has written over the years that talk about the history of Bartlesville. And Geraldine was Edgar's wife. And so you can see here, this couple was married in 1890. This is another famous couple here in Bartlesville you've probably all heard of, Frank and Jane Phillips. They got married in Creston, Iowa on February 18, 1897. And Frank was actually in the banking business at the time, and he married his boss's daughter. So that must have told his boss, he must have had a pretty good relationship with his boss for his boss to let him marry his daughter. And I think this picture, Jane looks so young in this picture. We have some other photos of Jane and Frank when they were older, and she looks like she might have been like 18 in this photograph.
Does anybody know how old she is?
I'm not sure, and I could go look it up. I'm not exactly sure how old she was at the time.
That'd be kind of fun to know.
Yeah, it might be. Now, this is Jefferson and Louise Sarcoxie. They got married in 1901, and Jefferson and Lucie were both descendants of Delaware tribal Indians who had come to Oklahoma when after the Civil War, when the Cherokee sold land to the Delaware tribe. Lucie was actually the granddaughter of Cow, who was a really well-known Delaware Indian. They claim that she lived to be 114 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And that she lived here in Bartlesville until her death. They were married out at the Delaware Silver Lake Baptist Church, which is no longer there, but it's like one of the parent churches of, I think, the Silver Lake Baptist Church that's now on the highway. Now this is another gentleman you've probably heard of, Jasper Exendine. He was I'll say he was probably mostly well known for being a cowboy here in town, but he's also has some history with the oil boom. He was one of the men who they claim saw the sheen of the oil on the water as they were exploring one day. He and another gentleman, George Keeler. And this is a picture of him and his third wife, Sadie Clark Exendine. They were married in 1904. This is Eula Campbell, Wynn. And the picture, on the caption of this picture, it says that her wedding suit was plum colored. So I can imagine this was probably a beautiful, deep, dark plum purple color, and her hat must have had some fur on it, and it was quite, I think, quite extravagant, quite beautiful. We have another picture that I'll show you in a little bit of her daughter's wedding dress as well. So it's like some generational pictures that we have in our archives. Mrs. Wynn lived in Oshaleta, and she and her husband operated the general store out there until 1925. This is John and Edna Green, and they were married in 1907. They came to Dewey in 1920, and John was the agent or operator for the Santa Fe Railroad at the Dewey station of the railroad, and he worked out there for 26 years and retired from that position in 1946. And you can see this is one of the first pictures where you see the bride wearing her veil, which makes me wonder if this picture was taken on their wedding day, or if maybe they were just posing that way after the event. This is Hamp and Jennie Scudder, and the Scudders were quite interesting people. They lived out near Hog Shooter Creek, which I believe is east of here, out close near or going toward Nowata. Jennie was quite an interesting lady. She was a farmer. She had a very large flock of turkeys, and she was a Cherokee, and we have pictures of her in her Cherokee outfit standing out in her flock of turkeys with her kids. Yeah. And there's stories about one of the old, I believe it's the Osage chief Fred Lookout, coming to buy a turkey from her for Thanksgiving, and the story talked about how he came to her place in his fancy Rolls Royce, and they put that turkey in a bag, and then put that live turkey in his fancy car. Hamp was a member of the Indian Territory Cowboy and Pioneer Association, and he was also a friend of Frank Eaton, who we know today is the person who Pistol Pete is characterized after. Now, this is an unknown couple. I don't have their names, but the reason that I picked this picture is because it's one of the first times in our archives where you begin to see a woman wearing a white dress. And I don't know if you can see from back that far, but this has a really pretty sash that goes across her chest. I think they call it a bretelle. And it's got 3/4 length sleeves with it looks like organza on the sleeves. And the 1900s, 1910s is when we really start to see the white wedding dress becoming in fashion, especially here in the United States. The summertime dresses were made out of light fabrics like linen or cotton, and so this dress is a very good example of that. And you can, if you want to see it up closer later, you can see the embellishments on her dress as well. Now this is Martha Jane Phillips Starr. She was the daughter of Ellie Phillips, who was the brother of Frank Phillips. And we have her dress here on display for you to see today. And when you come around the back, you can see how long her train is. We have it kind of tied up so it doesn't get stepped on today. But this was quite an extravagant dress for the time. She got married on October 26, 1929 to Wilbur Starr. He was known as Wit, I believe. That was his nickname. And they got married here in town at the Christian church, the old Christian church in the downtown area here. You can tell, especially by looking at the bridesmaids' dresses, that the 1920s flapper styles were really popular at that time. There were you can see the little layers on the bridesmaids' dresses, but there's also a hint of that classical era as well, because the men are all wearing beaver covered top hats.
Yeah.
So there was it was a combination, I believe, of the old and the new when you look at this wedding. Another well-known wedding, probably the wedding of the decade here in Bartlesville, was when John M. Kane married Marie Foster, the daughter, H.V. Foster's daughter. John Kane was John H. Kane's son. He was one of the first lawyers here in town, and Marie Foster's father, H.V. Foster, was a well-known oil man here in town. They got married on June 14, 1933. Probably was right in the middle of the Depression, but Mr. Foster was quite a savvy businessman, and he had sold most of his oil shares by that time and was into the investment business. So probably they were able to have quite a nice wedding because of that. And they were married out at the Foster's ranch out in the country near Oshaleta.
And this is where John B., our representative, he comes from this part of the family.
Right. He would have been John M.'s grandson, right?
I believe so, yes.
Or are they great?
Grandson or great?
One of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His father was John F., so.
Now, it's during this time too that we begin to see dresses taking on familiar, copying designs from movie theater or movies and things like that. And so I think what I really like about Marie's dress is she has this really pretty cape that comes across her shoulders, and then her veil is as long as her train.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's quite an extravagant.
Do you think that picture was taken at the ranch as well?
Yes.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yes, I think these were both. I
Beautiful.
think that Frank Griggs probably took them at the ranch.
We've tried to drive by the old ranch to see it. There is no way to see it, even when the trees are.
It's built.
Yeah.
There's a fence around it.
Reason for that.
Yeah,
There's
but
a
I
large
figured
fence
you
around
could see
it.
something.
Yeah.
All I can see is the barn.
So
Yeah.
we need to make it public when Oak Woo has their annual fundraiser out there, and we can all buy tickets
Yeah.
and go.
Yeah, and then we
Oh,
can
is
go
that
see
where it
it.
is?
They have a fundraiser out at the ranch
Yeah.
every year to
Oh, I
raise
didn't
money.
know that's where it was
I
at.
forgot what
Yeah.
they
And
call it.
we toured it with the Ollie group too.
Isn't
Oh,
it
yeah.
the Ranch of Quail or something like
Yes.
that? But
Yeah.
there's a Spanish
Yes.
name for it, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
something Rancho de Cordonese or something like
Yeah.
that.
Good job.
Something.
Yeah.
I just know I said it quite right. Now, earlier I mentioned Mrs. Wynn and her beautiful plum suit. This is actually Mrs. Wynn's daughter, Pauline Wynn Jones. And she married Charles Wynn, who was from Bartlesville. The Wynns lived in Oshaleta and the Joneses lived in Bartlesville. Mr. Jones, Charles eventually went to work for Phillips, and they lived in Phillips, Texas for a while, which if any of you have ever heard the history of Phillips, Texas, it's no longer incorporated. It's mainly just part of the Phillips Corporation now, and they have nobody living there except maybe a few workers. But when the Wynns came back to town, Mr. Charles actually went to work with his father. And Charles's father was a well-known real estate person here in town. Let me find his name here. I lost my mouse. I think the name of the company was R.R. Jones. It was a realtor here in town in the excuse me, in the 50s and 60s. And then eventually Charles and Pauline's daughter ran the business. Oh, there it is. Here we go. Pauline and Charles' daughter's name was Nancy Jones. And some of you may have met her. She was a realtor here in town, I believe during the 1990s. So this was there. What I really like about this photograph is the flower girl. She reminds me of myself when I was about 8 years old, and I was a flower girl from my aunt's wedding, and I got in trouble for setting my little flower girl basket on the stage while in the middle of the wedding because it was too heavy to carry. So yeah, my mother was like not happy with me. It was pretty funny. This is Muriel Leverett Luper, and Muriel was she married a man named Oral Luper in 1939. This dress, since it was the mid to late 30s, it's uncertain. I'm not sure. I would have to touch it to be able to tell you if it was made of satin or silk. There was, some of you may know more about fabric than I do, and
Looks like satin.
and either one of them were very, I think that black and white photography really makes those satin and silk dresses shine because the light coming off of the satin is quite spectacular. Muriel was a member of the class of 1932, and she has a cute little Peter Pan neckline that you can see. And then the candles behind were quite, I think, common in that time too. Her father was Warren Leverett, and he was the manager of the National Zinc Company, or the National Zinc Smelter in 1936. And so she probably had a mini wedding of the century or the decade. She was probably.
Do you know where it was?
I'm not sure.
No, it's okay, I just wondered.
I do know that Frank Griggs took this picture,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure where it was taken. This photo is of the Kent Taylor wedding in 1941, and I don't know a lot about this couple, but I do know that we were in the thick of the Great Depression right at that time, and the World War II was also beginning. And so I got to doing some research about rationing and how rationing of textiles affected weddings during the World War II era. And one thing I learned was that the government passed an ordinance called L85 during that time that said that women's dresses couldn't be over a certain width. You could only have a 2-inch belt. You could only have one pocket in your outfit. And ironically, those rationing requirements were not, did not apply to weddings.
Oh.
The government was so interested in boosting morale and keeping the morale of the nation up that they didn't limit any of those. They didn't apply any of those rations to wedding dresses. And so you still see quite extravagant wedding dresses in that time. Probably another wedding of the decade would have been when Mary Louise Adams married Edward Phillips Allis. And she was the daughter of Boots Adams, who was the CEO of Phillips Petroleum. And you can see this dress is quite extravagant. It has many, many layers of fabric and ruffles, and She's got quite an exceptional
Yeah.
veil as well. And one thing I like about this picture is the staircase. This is actually a really well-known house here in Bartlesville that Mr. Griggs used to like to take photographs of. And ironically, it was the house that Ellie Phillips gave to his daughter Martha Jane Starr Phillips on their wedding day. And when the Starrs moved out of town, it was purchased by another couple. But Mr. Griggs used to love this stairway, and so according to what Debbie Nixis told me, he would call up the owners and say, "Can I come and take pictures at your house? Have a bride with a fancy wedding dress." And then I have several pictures that I'll show you in a little bit of weddings throughout the decades that he took in that very same house. And you can tell, when we get there I'll show you, you can tell that different people lived there based on the decorations on the wall.
Do you know who owns it now?
Yeah. Which
It's
house is it?
It just
Barbara
got-
Garrison's daughter.
I heard that it just got bought as well. Is
Oh.
that who
Does it
bought it?
have the little castle turret thing on it? Is that it?
No, I don't think so.
It's on Delaware. It's
Okay, that's what I thought.
I understood that was
1424
that
South
was
Delaware.
Kathy's house that's on our trust authority.
Kathy Haddon, is that her name?
I just know she was Garrison.
Yes.
I can't remember her last
I
name.
think that she might have sold it recently though.
Oh, okay.
Because someone I recently talked to had just bought this house. Okay, this is Anne Caldwell Rawlins. Her father was Carlisle Caldwell, and he worked for Mr. Foster, H.V. Foster, at the Indian Territory Illuminating Oil Company during the 1920s and 30s, and then later he worked for City Services. And this picture was taken at the family home at 709 South Delaware here in Bartlesville. And I would say this is a satin dress. It has a really cute sweetheart neckline with fitted pointed sleeves. You can see the points on her, near her wrists. You can tell by this time though that rationing may not have been required for weddings, but there was definitely some changes taking place in the length of veils. And you begin to see shorter and shorter veils. And I'm not sure if that was a style change or if that was a rationing thing for parents and adults, parents and family members. Now this is Herbert and Mary Jean Bacon Mitchell, and what I like about this dress is that these very tiny buttons that go up and down the front of her dress, they must have been really hard to button up. I've heard of like special button tools that people would own that would help with making buttons like that. She has a Peter Pan neckline and a basque waistline on her dress, and then she has another long cathedral length veil too that I believe some of these, you know, the old saying, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. I wondered if some of these old veils might have been borrowed from the bride's mothers over time. That would be hard to do research on that, but it would be interesting to know the people more thoroughly. Now, also during the 40s and 50s, we have a lot of weddings where you just can tell that the bride and the groom are being economical. They have decided not to spend a lot of money on their wedding attire, so they'll go out and buy a really nice suit or a really fancy dress they could wear for another event. And here are a few pictures of those, of pictures like that, a few examples of pictures like that. And you can also see corsages are coming into becoming more popular. The flowers aren't quite as large as they used to be, and the brides are wearing hats instead of a veil. I think that this probably was not just about economizing, it was about the fact that we were we were just coming out of World War II, and people were getting married pretty, some of those people were married within a short amount of time. A lot of men would go and propose to their fiancés before they went overseas so they could be married before they got shipped out, and I think that a lot of these weddings were maybe put together quickly.
And
Yes.
a lot of them would wear their uniforms too.
Yes,
Yeah, my dad did.
yes.
My mom
We have a couple
Very good
pictures
dress.
like that too. And you also get, during the 1950s, you begin to see shorter length dresses. This is a ankle length dress, and then T-length is also common, and then you can see the veils are becoming shorter as well during the 1950s. And you begin to see that some of the skirts had petticoats underneath them. That was a common style during the 50s. And the T-length and the knee-length fashions were popular just in common clothes too, not just in wedding dresses. Some of the old movies, like the Father of the Bride movie with Elizabeth Taylor, and then the wedding of real-life actress turned princess Grace Kelly, I think also influenced wedding dresses. The next group, these dresses were obviously considered more princess dresses. They had the peplin design, which is the layers of fabric over the longer skirts. These were common during the 50s and early 60s. And then ball gowns was another style that you saw a lot during the
Yeah.
late 50s and early 60s. Now, I was telling you about the stairway at the house on Delaware Street. These are 3 different photographs I found of the same exact house
Oh, yeah.
that were taken by Frank Griggs. And I think your friend is Kathy Garrison Haddon.
Yeah,
I think
that's who I was talking
you,
about.
you knew. But I think that you can tell that over the course of time, this same house was decorated in different ways, and so I believe that Mr. Griggs probably befriended the owners of the house after it had gotten sold several times as well. Probably another wedding of the decade here in town was when Amy Doornbas married Thomas Preston. Amy was the granddaughter of H.V. Foster, the oil baron here in town, and her mother was Ruth Foster Doornbas, Foster's oldest daughter. And I really like the bell-shaped silhouette of this dress, and she has a really pretty neckline as well, off the shoulder neckline, that is corresponds to her cathedral length veil. The Prestons were married in 1951, and I believe they were married at the ranch as well. I'm pretty sure. Now there's other influences, you see other influences of Hollywood movies in dresses around town. Now this dress, I believe, looks a lot like the Cinderella or Snow White dress. And this is Sunny and Lavelma Mason. Some of you may know Lavelma. She used to work at the family health care clinic that used to be located near the armory. She was one of the ladies that established that clinic. And then you see this dress, it is being worn by Jane Riddlebarger Williams. And the Williams, Jane's father was a dentist here in town, Dr. Stephen Riddlebarger. He retired here in town in 1972. Some of you, if you were living here then, may recognize that name. Now this is the dress that I believe is inspired by the Dr. Zhivago movie. You can see she's got fur cuffs on her sleeves. Edwin and Joyce Vandenberg. And I know that Edwin worked for Phillips Petroleum until his retirement.
He did.
Now this actually is one of my friends,
Hey, I
Cindy
know
Hughes
her.
Flake. She is the daughter of Dr. Larry Hughes, who was a professor of mine out at Oklahoma Wesleyan University. and she got married in 1978 to David Flick, and they still live here in town.
And they're still married.
Yep, they are.
Yeah. That's true.
In fact, I did her wedding.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, she's a year older than I.
Oh, wow.
What do you mean by you did? What does that mean?
That means that I have digitized it.
Oh, they
That's-
digitized it.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on. I have for the last couple of
Cool.
I must have found this
Yeah.
picture right after you digitized it because it just popped up one day and I was like, oh, I know her.
Yeah.
Now I've got a few pictures from the 1980s. You can see that lace overlays were really common, and lace shoulders or sleeves, and
And color pictures.
color pictures.
Yeah.
And I think in these pictures we're beginning to come into the Bob Heil era of photographs,
Yeah.
and that's what my coworker Tamara's working on right now is digitizing the Bob Heil collection.
Yeah.
That's really, really large, from what I understand. It's very large.
Very large.
And then the last wedding dress I have to show you is from 1992. It's from the wedding of Anita and Ronnie Watson. And this dress reminds me of my prom dress. I graduated from high school in 1992. So the asymmetrical hemline and the peplins and the puff sleeves were all
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
really popular during that time period, and you can kind of see influences from like the royal wedding of Princess Diana in this dress, but it was also I wondered if those were like the spray painted shoes that you could get
Oh, yeah.
at what's the name of that store? Payless.
Payless,
And did you
yes.
ever shop at Payless?
Of course we did.
And the spray painted shoes, that's what I always remember about Payless. Well, that's all I have for today. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, I found out how old Jane was when she got married.
Oh, good.
She was 23.
Oh, okay.
She did look like she was 18.
I know.
I know, she looked quite young in that picture.
Or younger.
Yeah, or younger, yeah.
And where did you say the house was where Frank Griggs took the?
It's 1424 Delaware, I believe.
Okay, so let's just say in relationship to the big yellow house where Santa and the reindeer are,
Oh, right.
is it the one directly across the street?
The Romine house, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, that's the yellow one. And I'm thinking that this
I
one.
have to go look at my book.
You know what? No, I am wrong on
Bartlesville
that.
book.
I'd say the Romine house isn't yellow, right? Is it?
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's somewhere in that
Where George
area.
Clooney stayed when he was here
Yeah.
for the movie.
At that house?
Yeah.
Okay, now that I say that, it was actually, the guy with the hotel here, he gave,
Burlingame.
Burlingame
Oh.
gave that house right across
But you're
from.
talking about the one with the round castle looking
Yes,
thing?
it's with the turret.
Oh, that was Burlingame's house he built for his daughter.
Correct.
Right,
Yes.
Right, with the
Okay.
castle house.
Right,
castle house, yeah.
yeah.
That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What looked
Yeah,
like-
that was her wedding gift.
Yeah.
But
Pretty
then
nice, huh?
Yeah,
the
really.
Starr house was
That's better than a
With the
car.
plane?
on Delaware.
Do
'Cause
what?
the Starr house was on Delaware.
Okay,
And
now I feel like I need to go find it.
Yeah.
Is it in the book, do you know?
I think it is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I could tell you where it is on that street if I looked at the book.
Okay,
The Walls book?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It's the book. It's the
It should be
same
here any minute.
Oh, that's right.
Do-
Yeah.
It has been forever.
Did you know I reserved one?
No? Who'd you reserve one with?
Well, I thought I had told somebody here that when
Well, now you know.
when they came in, I would really like to buy one.
Okay. We got 300 of them, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Oh, okay, right on, okay.
We should have plenty.
Good,
We're gonna have to advertise that.
Mhm.
yeah, I think
So we
it'll
have
sell.
a-
Oh,
yeah.
We still probably about once or twice a week are getting people, hey, you have this book, do you have this
Yeah.
book?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody
So
wants
that
it
very
for
slow
their coffee
process, we're
table.
trying to get
I'm not
there.
kidding, it's a coffee table.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a wonderful one.
I use it all the time for research.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for coming,
Hey,
everybody.
this is good.
Right, very good, Denise.
Yeah.
We appreciate your supporting the History Museum.